Of Spotlight on Chatham, brought to you by the Chatham County Democratic Party. These 45-minute sessions are intended to be nonpartisan conversations about Chatham County government programs and public services. My name is Vicki Shea. This session is live on October 9th, 2025, and our guest today is Steve Newton, Chatham County Emergency Management Director. During the live session, viewers can type questions into the type chat box at any time, and toward the end of the session, the questions will be read aloud to our guest by Sue Blaylock. So thank you, Steve, for spending time with us this evening. Let's start with some basic questions about emergencies. In your experience, what are the most common emergency events in Chatham County?
In Chatham County, flooding, and flooding. That would be the top three. Whether it's a result of hurricane, tropical weather, or just being April or May, that it tends to be as far as disasters go and emergencies. But then, of course, being in Central North Carolina, we're susceptible to tornadoes, severe weather like squall lines that come through. If there are ice storms, those tend to ice and even snowstorms tend to be pretty consequential here. If there's any accumulation, as everybody knows, the capacity that we have to clear roadways, it just takes time in this community, and certainly ice and its impact on infrastructure, power, things like that.
So for people who've come here from other places, maybe having dealt with more ice more frequently, what does a typical or an atypical ice storm here look like?
So an atypical ice storm would be once we exceed about 1/4 of an inch of ice. And it, knock on wood, it's not terribly frequent that happens, but when that does, the weight, the load that it puts on trees, that it puts on the power lines themselves and the power poles, they start to fall. And so you not only have the impact to traffic and the roadways, depending on whether or not they were able to be pre-treated and those things, but then you've got the infrastructure itself. And so you may be stuck at home and the utility power is out. And it again, and with the capacity that we have locally to clear roadways and treat roads and apply sand and salt and brine, you may, especially from other states which have storms like this more frequently, you should expect it to take longer before the roads are clear. And that just tends to be a fact down here. And that's, you see DOT moves resources from across different districts. And so there's a lot of effort going on. But simply because it doesn't happen as often here, it tends to take longer.
So I've often heard, don't expect anything for 3 days. Have enough food and water and medicine for 3 days. Does that fit with your experience?
That's a good place to start. So I heard some counties say the first 72 are on you, or 3 days. And again, like I said, it's a good start. The challenge there is, what if it's 4 days? What if it's 5? There are cases in which, if there's enough significant damage and we can't get through a neighborhood because of trees down, because of other conditions, it may be longer. And especially if you have durable medical equipment or something else that you're dependent on, what is your capacity to go an extra day? Do you have enough medications? So you may, in your condition, your family, or somebody you care for, you may say, well, 3 days may be cutting it a little close. Let me make sure I have 5 days or 7 days. But as a starting point, absolutely, you should. Most of what we deal with, tends to be on the disaster side, and the disaster means that we've exceeded our normal local capacity to respond. And so we're requesting resources from outside the community, or we're applying local resources, but it's just going to take longer to help folks. And so when that happens, part of my job, as an emergency manager, is managing expectations. And so, part of what we want you to understand is we'll get to you, but it will not necessarily be as quickly as you're used to on a sunny day.
So can you explain who deals with the roads and who deals with the trees that come down? Because that's, of course, very
Mhm.
common around here.
So the Department of Transportation, this district manages 99% of the roadways, except for private roads, private drives, and parking lots and things like that. But 15501, in those, and then the towns manage some of the roads. Town of Pittsburgh, town of Siler City. They handle if a tree has fallen in the roadway. They will remove it or one of the contractors. However, when it involves a power line, which it frequently will, then they can't manage that. Even if we believe, if I truly believe that that power line's de-energized, that's not enough. We have got to call the power company and work with whether it's Duke Energy or Central Electric, or one of the other EMCs, to actually clear it first, and then it's some combination between DOT and then us. Now, the fire departments and other crews in forestry will help us at times to do what we call cut and shove. If a community is isolated because trees have fallen down and we need to create access to that community, so for emergency response, we may create a bare minimum path so we can get apparatus in. But that it won't be the cleaned up look with stacks of wood on the side of the road. It is simply just enough that these crews can get through.
And going back to flooding, um, I I assume there's specific locations that if it's going to flood, it's going to flood there. Is
Okay.
that
Yep.
so? You know,
It's a combination. So there are areas that habitually flood because they're along a creek bed. They have poor drainage. There's areas, Love Creek Basin in Siler City. There's a shopping center that habitually floods. There's a mobile home park near the Rocky River and Loves Creek that at least encroaches on that property. There's 87 or Sanford Road in Pittsburgh. There's areas of that habitually flood. And then it's interesting in Chatham County, you see at least 3 or 4 different types of flooding. So you'll see that will occur, but generally it's short lived. So you'll see the flash flooding, and the flash flooding can occur anywhere. And we saw this during Chantal with you put that much water anywhere in the county, there will absolutely be flooding, whether it's in a creek bed, that is an ephemeral creek, or just, it's a very slow meandering creek. It will not be for that storm, which happens anywhere. And then we also we see a longer term flooding once the water makes its ways to the river. We saw a little bit more rapid flooding that occurred in the Hall River during Chantal, but then during Florence, it was 3 or 4 days after the initial storm had passed that we then saw flooding in the deep. And the deep rises very slowly and it lowers very slowly. And it does isolate certain communities in the Asbury community. Um, and then we also we have the lake, which is primarily a flood control structure to protect areas downstream. And based on what they have to do to withhold water to prevent flooding from going downstream, and then whatever they calculate to allow for releases. There's also communities that are affected by that. There's some roads that just get cut in half and makes it very inconvenient to get to. And then there's some communities that potentially could actually be isolated again by that water. So it's for us. It's never just one. Hey, it rained. There's flooding. We're done. Move on. It's flooded, and that's going away. But now the new flood downstream, that water has to go somewhere.
right.
It's a very interesting environment to work in.
And you said that flooding is the most common and
Most
frequent.
common, yeah. It is you can set your watch by it. Say you can rely on it. It will occur in this county every year. We may or may not have winter weather. We may or may not have a hurricane that affects us. We will have flooding somewhere in this county.
Okay. So you've talked about some people are cut off and they are isolated in their homes for a period of time, and some of what they need to do to think about being prepared for that. What about the opposite kind of situation where people have to leave their homes for some reason? Can you talk about how you manage that situation?
So when residents need to evacuate because it's no longer safe to stay in your home, it's not safe to stay for a longer period of time. We also see, again, going back to durable medical equipment. If I need to be on an oxygen concentrator at home. I have a CPAP that I need to be using. All the things that need to be plugged in may have a battery in it, but at some point need to be plugged in. Then we'll consider opening up shelters in the county. And so in this county, there's not, we have 5 different locations that we've identified and surveyed as shelters. So we've got Chatham, uh, Chatham Central High School, Chatham Middle School, and Chatham Grove Elementary School. And then we've got the 2 senior center, the Centers for Active Living in Pittsboro and Silent, have all been surveyed to be shelters. And we practice, how do we set them up? And we have access to generators and things like that. However, we do not have the staff to open all 5 at any one time. So in this county, what we do is we watch where is impact, where is the community that does not have the capacity to quickly and easily recover, and then we'll consider opening a shelter there. We may open one on the east side and the west side, but we make a decision. We publicize these are the ones that are open. We put effort into can you get to the shelter? If not, can we provide transportation for that? And again, just our capacity to manage pets, and a lot of folks will not evacuate if they can't bring their pet. And so we've identified space at each one, either that we have the pet there at the location, and we work with the sheriff's office and the sheriff's office animal resources center to manage that along with other volunteers, or we'll actually take them back to the shelter depending on which site they get in or what resources we have available. So there's no one stop. This is how we do it every time. If we see the clouds coming, this is how we do it. We don't. We will make a decision as it's approaching, as the threat is occurring, and we'll publicize that out to everyone so they know where to go.
And talk about the publicizing. What are the different ways that you do that?
There's a handful of different ways, and so there's the standard, the Facebooks and the next doors and the social media outlets. There's the press releases we put out to traditional media, to broadcast media, to the news, to radio and television. We have what's called our alert Chatham system, which we can talk about a little bit more detail. But that allows me to, if you've registered on that, when we have a neighborhood that needs to evacuate, I can alert that neighborhood and say, your closest shelter is this location. This is what you should bring. This is what you can expect while you're there.
Okay. And let's see. What are the radio stations, if you know that specifically you would send this kind of information to?
So we end up sending them out to all the local ones, but I think our EAS is not this is not necessarily an EAS alert, but the channels tend to be 94.7 and 101.5. But what happens is all of the radio stations that serve this market will start to carry those messages, and that's what we rely on. And so we'll see. So ideally, the important part though is make sure you're tuning to a local station, and by local I mean it serves this market. Our alerts and our notifications will not be on a national news channel, and so make sure you choose a CBS and ABC and NBC affiliate, a WREL, a group like that serves this community, that will carry that kind of information.
And what about the Spanish speaking community?
Yep. So we've made a concerted effort, especially over this last year, to partner with the Latino community to identify what are we not doing enough of, and what are ways that you want to receive this information. And so if you may notice, like in our Facebook posts that we do, as well as the county as a whole does, is that you'll see them posted in English and in Spanish. I know originally for me, we would post something and we would make sure we linked it to one of the Hispanic Latino groups that serve that community, and just kind of, well, I assume that they'll translate. But they indicated it would really be helpful for us to translate it ahead of time. It makes perfect sense. So we've done that. Again, going back to Alert Chatham, that Code Red system that we use now has the ability to automatically translate, because we don't necessarily have bilingual staff that are on duty all the time, that we're able to push out a message and it translates. And you can register for Code Red and say, I speak English as a primary language. I speak Spanish, and ours will actually, we can translate into Spanish, into French, into Mandarin Chinese, which when we added that feature, we have a large Spanish speaking population, and we have a significant, not insignificant French speaking and Chinese speaking population. But by far, if it's not English, by far it's Spanish. But we're really making an effort to reach that community, and then also reach the community leaders that they trust and have a relationship with, so we can push information. And so even if you've never met me and you don't necessarily trust me and what I'm saying, we're putting the message to somebody in the community that you do trust and you do have a relationship with, that will help guide you to make an educated decision.
So tell us about Alert Chatham.
So Alert Chatham is just how we've branded our mass notification system. So we use a product called Code Red. And what that allows us to do is, from the public standpoint, is we can send out alerts for whatever's happening. We can draw a shape and say, I want to send a message to that area of the county. And it's by a voice, it's by email, text message, TDD, a telecommunication device for the deaf. And there's an app also that if you have it installed. But that allows us to send very targeted messaging to a community that's registered with us. Now, there's never a one-stop shop for how we do warnings and alerts. So we have other tools, but that's the tool that we use the most frequently. And it's not terribly often that we have to use it, but it also is a way for you, if you register in the system, you're able to say, I want to receive National Weather Service alerts for tornado and severe thunderstorms and things like that. Those are set off automatically. So again, let's use Chantal as an example. We had 2 different tornado warnings that were issued by the National Weather Service. If you live within that radius or that area that they marked, then you would have gotten an alert on this system. But the key is, I don't have your telephone. By default, I don't have your cell phone number. I don't know your email address. I don't know necessarily where you live. And so if you register and say, I want to receive alerts for my workplace, which is in Chatham, and my home, which is in Chatham, or my parents' home, which is in Chatham, and I want to receive them on these devices, and then you're able to control what do I actually get. We are very judicious about how we send it off. We're not going to send out a message of, hey, there's a street fair coming next week. We simply use it for alerts and warnings for emergencies. The Weather Service, you're able to sign up for it. It automatically triggers it. The other ones, really, oftentimes we're supporting our local public safety agency, say a law enforcement agency or a fire department, that they say there's a gas leak in this neighborhood. We need to evacuate. They'll ask us or the 911 to set that system off to alert that community. And then again, there's other tools that we use for alert and warning, but that's the one that we use the most, that we have the most control of.
So if someone is not registered and wants to register for that, how would they do that?
The easiest way is to go to a website. It's www.readychatham.org. And then on the left side, there's a link to Alert Chatham. And then just follow those prompts and follow the instructions there. So www.readychatham.org is the easiest way.
And so at Ready Chatham, is Alert Chatham the only option, or does that take you to other?
So there's a lot of information on that website, everything from, how should I be prepared? What at least makes sense? It's a lot of businesses that we work with that create their own emergency plans, ask for our countywide emergency plan. That's available on there. A lot of guidance along those lines. And so this is just one of those many resources that's maintained on that site.
And I'm assuming that's free, that there's no cost to register.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, there's no cost to register. I'm not familiar with any services now that cost per text, but I mean, I'm assuming if your cell phone service charges you per text, then there could possibly be a charge there. But we do not charge you for anything, and we don't share your information. It's maintained actually by this company where we don't have a lot of visibility on it, other than we draw the shape and it says there are 1,000 people that we're notifying.
So people do spend money to be notified, for example, by a television station or a radio station, which is fine if they do that, but you provide the National Weather Service information as long as it exists for free, right?
Correct. Correct. And it's free, and it's near instantaneous. It's as they draw the shape and they click a button in Raleigh at the forecast office. This system ingests that and immediately starts and that's the advantage. At 2 o'clock in the morning, if there's a tornado that's coming through, and I happen to be the person on call and responsible for setting that system off, there would absolutely be a delay. But in this case, there's not, because the system automatically pushes the weather alerts forward. Now, if there are other alerts where law enforcement's there's law enforcement activity somewhere and they've asked people to stay in their homes, that's a phone call, and then there's a process for us to set that off. But this is, and again, there's no charge from us. There's no charge from the Weather Service. This is exactly what we're here for.
And what about notifying schools? Is that something that it can be part of your system if there's a tornado during the school day?
So that the schools have their own means of monitoring that, as well as notifying parents and students. And so we work very closely with the school system. However, this system is separate from that, other than the fact that individual teachers could register. I work at this particular school. Here's the address, just like any other workplace. They absolutely could do that. But they also, there's other means that we work with them on to make sure they have timely notifications. Ideally for them, we want them to know even before the conditions get that bad.
Right. Okay, well, here's something I've always wanted to know, just in general.
Okay.
When someone calls 911, what happens?
So you call 911, and some amazing technology behind the scenes figures out where are you calling from. So if you're on a cell phone, it's figuring out your latitude and longitude, and it's plotting that point somewhere on a map. And then it determines what is the correct, we call them public safety answering points, or PSAPs, but everybody else calls them, they're just 911 centers. And so it finds the appropriate 911 center for that location that you're calling from. The 911 that room is staffed by highly trained telecommunicators that your call comes in, they see a telephone number you're calling from, they see the location you're calling from. They also, if it's a cell phone, they'll see the tower that you're actually reaching. And they're able to rebid it. And if you're in motion, they're able to see where you are. But they're still going to ask you, what is your address? Where did you need help? And they'll ask any number of questions because, a couple of things are happening. We want to make sure that we send you the correct help and make sure if it's a fire, we're sending the fire department. If it's EMS, if somebody is injured, then we can go ahead and get EMS on the way, medical on the way. If it's a law enforcement component, we have law enforcement on the way. But then also now they're able to provide what we call pre-arrival instructions. And so, that whether it takes 2 minutes or 20 minutes for help to get there, we can initiate help immediately. And so the things that really, cause harm, I'm not breathing at all, or I'm not breathing well, I need CPR, like sanguinating blood, bleeding injury, and things that, or I have an uncontrolled airway, or even, we're having imminent birth, we have a pregnant patient and with an imminent birth. We can immediately start providing care even before the first responder gets there. And so that's part of asking all the questions and figuring out, okay, we've got help on the way. Now let me walk you through, how do we help this person? And even if you've never done CPR before, if you've never done hemorrhage control, we will absolutely walk you through that. And so that occurs, and then that first responder gets there. And then generally that's where the telecommunicator, and you don't always have to stay on the phone with every caller. It just depends on the nature of the call. And then first responder gets there, and then we'll hang up. But it's incredible. We were incorporating new technology every day, and most recently we have artificial intelligence, a software that's based on AI that while you're talking, so for instance, while we're talking right now, it's transcribing the conversation. If you're speaking in a language other than English, it is recording that and also translating that. And then it's also summarizing what is the nature of this exchange that we're having. And it's learning as we go. So even things like, if I heard it the other night, the system originally was really struggling with the word Siler City. It kept trying to spell it as Silver City. But we were able to go to the manufacturer and say, hey, no, it's actually Siler is a legitimate word for us. And it's learning. And so it's fixing that now. And so there's any number of technologies that are coming on board that we're able to take advantage of in the telecommunication. And it's all about, improving outcomes, whether it's an EMS call or fire call or what have you. It's all about, can we leverage these technologies, these techniques, and this training for these telecommunicators and these approaches to mean that at the end of the day, you have a successful outcome leaving the hospital, or you didn't lose all of your property because of a fire, or what have you. And so all those things. And so we're constantly improving in that respect.
So tell me a little bit about your staff. How many are there? What's their training? Who works when?
So we have two departments that work under our roof, and so I'm on the emergency management side. Mike Wright is the director for the 911 side. We work very closely together, but we are two distinct departments. And so I have three field staff that are, two of them are primary. Well, actually, I have four. So you have myself that we're primarily emergency management, and so the field response for plans and all of those things that we do. We have certain programs that we support, especially like the Harris Nuclear Plant preparedness program, and then many other things that we're involved in. And then I also have an emergency systems manager. And so this is radio systems, computer systems. As you could imagine, with the technology evolving like it does, we need an expert at this point to actually be able to maintain and sometimes deploy this equipment. And then I've got two administrative staff, one of which we share across the two departments. The office manager is shared between emergency management and 911. And then I have the 911 addressing specialist works under my roof. We work from our side, for the most part, work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We always have somebody on call. My on-call day is Tuesdays. And then we rotate weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's at any point during that day, that 24-hour period, something goes bump in the night that either a fire department needs, just some guidance on how to deal with. We've got a small spill. Does it meet a reporting threshold or whatever it may be, or some other guidance, or needs this, the other thing that we do is we manage specialized resources from across the state or even across the nation. And so we're able to call in those resources to support local responses. And then sometimes we're also the ones going out somewhere else, either across the state or across the country. And so, but we have meetings, we do plans, we support the commercial industrial side. And if you store chemicals for more than 24 hours in your facility, we work with them. But then during disasters, all of our routine stuff gets put on hold, and you work as long as there is work to be done. And so it may be, generally after the first few days, we try to balance it out. Usually those first few days, it's many, many hours, not a lot of time at home.
And where is this in the county? Where is your office? Are you?
So our office is on Renaissance, off of Renaissance Drive. So actually out Innovation Way, off of Renaissance. So the same road that you have the detention center, the Sheriff's Office Animal Resources Center, solid waste, and the bus garage. So we're located there.
And the school system, right?
You're absolutely right. Yep, the
Okay.
new
Yeah.
schools general services building, the other brand new building right there. Yep.
Okay, and what is the budget for your department?
So for my department, it's just over about $6 million. But that's in addition to emergency management, the reason that number it sounds so large is because I also administer the EMS contract and the forestry contracts. Um, and so there's that part of it is folded in. If you look at just the pure emergency management side, we're I think right at the just shy of $1 million threshold. Um,
And if there's a year with double the number of emergencies,
Mhm.
happens to your budget at that point?
Well, the good news for me is I'm salaried, so I can work many hours as I want, and there's no impact whatsoever. Um, Generally, what happens is, so if our staff deploys to a disaster, when we go and assist other counties or go outside the state to assist, we submit reimbursement requests, and so really us helping somebody outside of our community should be a zero sum once that person comes back. We will make that employee whole. If that person works overtime, we will still meet those standards. But we will essentially send a bill either to the state or to that community or as part of a disaster declaration, get reimbursed. If we've had some years that are just busier than others, but we have some padding built into the budget where whether it's overtime or what have you to allow for some of that. But for us, if it's a busy year, just you're going to be busy.
And so you're a county department, that these are county funds, except for if you're doing it for
Mhm.
some other
Correct.
jurisdiction or whatever. Okay. And so have you felt or do you expect to feel any effects of state and federal budget cuts in this current environment?
So we feel some of it with we have what's called the Emergency Management Preparedness Grant, which we've enjoyed every year for decades. That amount is shrinking. Part of that is because I think the overall allocation is being reduced, but then also with the state budget challenges, a lot of the positions, and we work incredibly closely with North Carolina Emergency Management, and we really depend on their staff being funded and filled and experts in place to, again, as we were doing recovery for Chantal, having the person to call and guide us through that process. I mean, the system we work symbiotically with the state, but when a lot of their positions are grant funded, and so when they are facing a budget challenge like that, there is a trickle down effect to us. Not even necessarily about a fund, but just the capacity that we don't have locally because we enjoy it existing at the state level. And so when they face challenges, we're facing challenges. So we see it there. And then reduced amounts, eligibility for certain grants, and those things always tend to be a challenge.
The grants are federal grants, is that what you're saying?
Most of the
To the
grants are
state.
federal grants that are passed through the state. Uh, I would say really easily most of the grants that we've done are pass through grants, whether it's for exercises or equipment or training. They will go to the state first. EMPG is one where the state takes a portion and then the remaining portion is then allocated to the counties. Um, and again, it's one that we've had for years, but even seeing that being reduced.
So
It's for us, it's not going to affect services. It's never, even in the budget process, we anticipated this. Um, but I have no doubt in some communities, in some counties, that funding probably is, or very well could affect services as far as, if it's paying for specialist or even the EM coordinator for that county.
are there things that do you go to the county budget and ask for additional something?
So,
equipment, personnel or something?
so as part of the budget process, yes, so just like any other department, we would, if we can identify an operational need and say, this is is it a new service that we want to provide, or is this just sustaining an existing service? And so, as part of the budget process, we we actually within like public safety as a whole looks at all of the different requests. So I mean, we try to not put ourselves in silos, and we're able to say, well, we've asked for 5 telecommunicators, and I need 2 EM specialists, and I need for whatever other departments. And then within that group, they're able to try to prioritize, and before it even reaches the county management, before we actually the budget's proposed to the commissioners. But that way, it's informed by more than just simply me saying, "Hey, I need 2 people." We're now putting it in perspective of we need 2 people as a whole. Public safety needs this, and maybe we prioritize this. And do I need to fill both positions immediately, or do I fill it mid-year and eliminate some of the cost, or can I kind of balance it out? The advantage with emergency management, there's plenty of work to be done. We're not necessarily directly impacted by a population. So we can have a 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 person increase in the overall population. Those are not necessarily, we don't go to more calls necessarily because of that. We will go to more calls because there's new industry that is now built in the county, or kind of a much larger scale. Whereas sheriff's office, EMS, fire, and 911 telecommunicators is a direct correlation to you have more people, you have more calls to 911 where people are having to receive the call or having to dispatch. So we have some advantage over the rest of public safety in that respect.
Right, emergencies, yeah. Let me just see from Sue if are there any chat questions, because if not, I have something else to ask.
No chat questions.
Okay, well then tell us please, and this is probably close to the end, about the CERT program or the CERT team.
So in Chatham County, we've got the Chatham County Community Emergency Response Team, where we really have 3 focuses. The first focus is we want to encourage residents and their families to be prepared for emergencies. Even if you have no intention of doing anything outside of your property or outside of your home, if you are more prepared and your family is more prepared, we can prevent an emergency from becoming a disaster. So even just that. And so that group, we provide training. There's basic training of how do you cut the gas off at your house? How do you rescue somebody? Very, very basic fundamental thing. How do you use a fire extinguisher? We also encourage you to protect yourself, protect your family, and then protect your neighborhood. So again, with no intervention with the county or anyone else, could you help your neighbor if they had a minor medical emergency? Do you know how to alert 911 and just that process? And could you help in that respect? And then, if you're so inclined, helping us. And we've used our CERT team heavily in Chatham County ever since Florence. During Florence, they helped us in the Emergency Operations Center answering telephones. They helped us maintain situations. We have lots of boards in the EOC, as you would imagine, maps and things like that. And so they helped maintain those for us during COVID. They were at every single mass vaccination clinic that was held with public health, helping with traffic, helping with registration. I mean, they were an absolute essential resource for us. But again, not to discourage somebody from participating in that, because I don't like to do things like that. Even if just teaching you how to do CPR, teaching you how to do basic hemorrhage control may help save a life in your family. And so we're very excited about that program, and it's growing. So not only we have Chatham County CERT, Farrington Village has a CERT program that's getting off the ground. There's longstanding CERT programs in Apex and Cary, and Governor's Club, and just all around. Or I'm sorry, at the Carolina Preserve, not Governor's Club, but all of those are opportunities to learn and possibly help your neighbors, or even possibly help the community at large.
So for someone who wants to either participate in one of these in their community they don't know about, or they want to join a club or just get some of this training for themselves, how would people do that?
So the easiest way is that same website, www.readychatham.org. And if you look under there's a tab or a thing on the left for what are the being prepared. And one of those steps is get involved. And we look at the get involved. It shows contact information for how to when's the next meeting, and we try to post it on there. We've recently tried to hold some sort of quarterly training, but there's also training that goes across the state. If you search online for North Carolina CERT training, these
CERT,
I'm
right?
sorry, CERT. So North Carolina or NC space CERT training. They've got a session that actually starts tomorrow in Carborough. There's training. It's a 2-day training. There's training starting on Saturday in Morrisville. There's training in March in Cary. We've hosted them before. We'll get on the schedule again at some point in the near future to host training. And again, there's no commitment at that point. If your only interest is I want to learn these basic skills just for myself and my own family, that's great. That's still helps the community, helps us.
Right. Are there any other ways that volunteers can assist your department?
Specifically in our department, the two major volunteer programs we have is CERT, which we leverage for a lot of things. We try to funnel most of our volunteers through CERT. We also have what's called Chatham Auxcom, the Auxiliary Communications, and that's our ham radio or amateur radio group. And we call that amateur radio group, but they do a lot more than just amateur radio. But if you have an interest on the technology side, that's another opportunity to participate. Those group, both CERT and the Auxcom group, support us on. We do. It's just part of our normal job: training, exercises for public safety for different departments. We support the U.S. Army doing jumps into Jordan Lake with parachutes. We do any number of things, and then we leverage our CERT teams and our Auxcom teams to help as a force multiplier for our own staff. And so we've always been very upfront of it. If you want a meaningful opportunity to volunteer, we'll put you in somewhere meaningful. We don't do a whole lot of just feel good training. We do training for things that we actually need help in, and we will actually employ these volunteers in that capacity.
So Chatham County Emergency Management is such a jewel that you were recently testifying in Congress, right?
I
What,
did.
what was the context of that?
And so that was, they asked me to speak primarily about the topic was public safety communications in the United States. Part of it is looking at our ability to alert and warn through iPaws and wireless emergency alerts and those systems. There was also a lot of discussion about 911 and next generation 911 and the new technologies that are coming out. And then also our experience with communications and communications failures during Hurricane Helene and the challenges that we faced and how do we overcome them. And there's several different milestone events occurring in the next few years where they have to make funding decisions on FirstNet, on different things. And just they were trying to become, they wanted an opportunity to be informed on that. And so I had an opportunity to answer a lot of questions about, what were the challenges that we faced? How did we overcome them? And maybe some ideas of how to improve it in the future. So I was honored to be able to do it. It was a really interesting experience. I've taught in front of lots of groups and lots of different things. That was a unique one for me.
Well, we in Chatham County are just very grateful for everything that you and your department do, and we're very lucky to have you here and so dedicated for such a long period of time.
We've got a very good team, so I'm surrounded by a lot of very qualified, very motivated people.
Well, we're going to post this. This is being recorded, and we're going to try to make all of this information available to the extent that we can add to your audience of people who are learning these things or want to volunteer. That's why we're
I
doing
appreciate
this.
that. Thank you.
So thank you so much for spending this time with us this evening. And I think we're finished.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
Great.
having me.
Bye-bye. Have a good
All right.
night.
Bye-bye.